Well, here we go again. Bill Gates funded reporters are spreading propaganda that the hantavirus can last up to 6 years in men's sperm and cause transmission, ladies. The one problem is the actual study doesn't support that headline. It doesn't even support the word sperm. Meanwhile, favipiravir, an emergency use trial medication for Hanta that has been shown to not really even work for Hanta, is being given protection from lawsuits in case something bad happens to you. I'm Odessa Orlowitz. Let's look into the groups that are spreading this propaganda and who benefits financially. So here it is. Oh, and quickly before I forget, don't forget Adrian Spitters is an awake investment advisor who specializes in helping Canadians diversify through multifamily real estate, precious metals, and professionally managed investment portfolios. Visit adrianspitters.com or email to adrian@adrianspitters.com. Thank you to my sponsor. And he's awake, he's a friend of mine, and he's awesome. So I feel like it's my moral obligation to expose this propaganda as it comes so people can be reminded of what they're doing here. It's really important that we don't let them get away with this again. The best thing that ever happened was people exposing Bill Gates, exposing Big Pharma, and just outing it. So as they try to do it again, yes, I do feel it's important to continue to expose it so you can share it with your friends and family. So, does hantavirus survive in human sperm? The real story behind the latest hantavirus hysteria, and I don't think this is getting enough attention. A single Swiss man's semen sample is now headline news on 3 continents. What's behind the hysteria? A Gates funded journalism desk, a biosurveillance firm backed by the CIA's venture capital arm, and a Swiss biodefense laboratory. And they're all feeding each other a story that the underlying science does not support. On May 14th, The Telegraph's Global Health Security Desk published a story with a headline engineered for maximum alarm. Hantavirus may survive in human sperm for up to 6 years and cause transmission risk. Within hours, the story was syndicated across international outlets like Yahoo News, tied to the 8 confirmed cases aboard the ship. Not sure how many confirmed cases there are now, irrelevant though. The study, N=1, no live virus ever isolated, no human sexual transmission documented in history. The recommendation, sourced to a private global health risk analytics firm called Airfinity, was that male patients should receive extensive safe sex guidance beyond the 42-day quarantine, analogous to the WHO's Ebola survivor semen monitoring protocols. There's just one problem. Like I said in the intro, that study does not support the headline or the word sperm. What it supports is a much smaller, much more honest claim that fragments of viral RNA were detected in one 55-year-old Swiss man's ejaculate for an unusually long time without any evidence that the virus is alive, transmissible, or has ever been sexually transmitted by anyone ever in the recorded history of hantavirus research. He says, let me walk you through what the actual paper says and then show you who paid for the panic. The paper is titled Presence and Persistence of Andes Virus RNA in Human Semen, published in the open access MDPI journal Viruses, November 2023. The lead institution is SPIE's Laboratory, SPIEZ, the Swiss Federal Office for Civil Protection, which in plain English is Switzerland's Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Defense Lab. A biodefense lab, remember this, he says. But here's what the actual study establishes in the author's own words. They never isolated live virus, not once. From the paper's discussion section, unfortunately, the isolation of the infectious virus was not successful for any of the samples or culture systems used. They tried. They selected 3 semen samples with the highest detectable viral RNA, collected 40, 82, and 320 days after the patient first got sick, and attempted to grow live virus in 5 different cell systems: Viro E6 cells, BSR Viro mixes, primary human bronchial epithelial cells, primary human nasal epithelial cells, and 3D human airway epithelia. They passaged the samples repeatedly. They even homogenized sperm cells directly and tried that. Nothing grew. This is the central fact that the Telegraph and others in mainstream media buried. Without isolation of the infectious virus, the claim that hantavirus survives in semen is doing extraordinary work on the verb survives. What survives is genetic material, just RNA fragments. Whether any of that RNA is packaged inside functional, replication competent viral particles capable of infecting another human cell remains completely unproven by this study. And here he shows the virus shows almost no replication. The authors sequenced the viral genome from samples taken 240 days apart and 1978 days apart. They found a 33 base pair deletion in a non coding region and 3 single nucleotide variants in total. The author's own conclusion: the virus persisted within cells of the male reproductive tract with only very limited replication activity. A virus that isn't replicating isn't producing the viral load required for transmission. The author says this, the Telegraph doesn't. The Telegraph wrote about hantavirus in sperm. The study cannot tell you whether the virus is in sperm at all. It might be in immune cells. It might be in the shed epithelial cells from the reproductive tract lining. These have radically different implications for what sexual transmission would even mean. 4, the patient is loaded with neutralizing antibodies and has been for 6 years. The patient's neutralizing antibody titer peaked above 30,000 by day 21 of illness and has remained at high levels for the entire 6-year follow up. And we're going to get to who's making money off this and how they're all benefiting from this article. And the authors explicitly note, quote, repeated symptomatic infection with hantaviruses have not been observed, suggesting lifelong protection. Any virus exiting his testes would walk into an immune buzzsaw. So, number 5, sexual transmission of hantavirus has never been documented anywhere, ever. The paper's actual closing claim, hedged with care, quote, taken together, our results show that ANDV has the potential for sexual transmission. A hypothesis, not a finding. The authors elsewhere acknowledge, although transmission via sex contact has not been documented, high viral loads and extensive contact among people may contribute to a higher likelihood of transmission. Keep in mind, they've never fear porn people like this ever before, guys. And this thing's been around for a very long time. So, virus, no virus. I'm just telling you that they're at it again with the propaganda, telling guys to put their condoms on. And sample size of the entire study, 1 patient, one. The author says so in their stated limitations. The limitation of this study is the small sample size. It remains to be determined whether persistence occurs in larger populations of long-term Andes viruses disease survivors. Can you imagine if, like, the other side, the honest scientists, did an entire paper about one person? It would be laughed off the Bill Gates propaganda machine desk. One person, but they decided to just go with this propaganda. The international press has converted it into a global sexual transmission emergency. The question is, who benefits when that conversion happens? Follow the money. The Telegraph desk funded by Gates. At the bottom of the Telegraph's hantavirus article, which is where this initiated, is a small badge linking to the desk's About page. That page contains the following disclosure. Our global health security coverage is partly funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The desk exists because Gates pays for it. Its remit, per its own description, includes pandemic threats and outbreaks of significance, the spread of other communicable diseases like Ebola and Zika, as well as a wide range of rare diseases, and the growing threat of bioterrorism. Quoted by them. Read that list. The desk is not funded to cover heart disease, road deaths, suicide, alcohol, or air pollution, the actual leading killers of human beings. It's funded to cover the threats whose amplification benefits the funder's pandemic preparedness portfolio. This is not a conspiracy claim. This is the explicit public facing funding structure of the desk. The Telegraph adds to the standard disclaimer, quote, this support comes without strings and the Telegraph retains full editorial control. Right. Editorial control is relevant when the selection of topics covered is itself the lever. A desk paid to find pandemic stories will find pandemic stories. A single patient case report will not enter mainstream consciousness on its own. It enters mainstream consciousness when there is a funded apparatus whose institutional survival depends on stories like that. And Airfinity. Oh, the CIA invested biosurveillance firm quoted as an authority. Airfinity is a commercial biosurveillance company whose business model requires elevated perceived pandemic risk. The interesting investor in Airfinity's cap table is in QTEL IQ2, identified in business filings as an Airfinity investor. InQtel is, per Wikipedia and multiple independent sources, the venture capital arm of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as the CIA. IQ2's portfolio famously includes Palantir and the company that became Google Earth. It is now invested in pandemic biosurveillance. So, when the Telegraph Gates funded desk quotes analysts at Airfinity recommending expanded quarantine and surveillance protocols, what is actually happening is this. A commercial biosurveillance firm with CIA venture capital is being presented to the public as a neutral expert source on whether expanded biosurveillance is warranted. It is not a neutral source. It sells the product that the policy would mandate. And the SPIES connection, or SPIES, however you say it, a biodefense lab as the origin point. The original viruses paper was produced at SPIES Laboratory, a Swiss federal biological and chemical defense facility. This is not a public health lab, it's a biodefense institution whose mission framing includes preparation for biological warfare and bioterrorism scenarios. A biodefense lab finding viral persistence in an immune privileged site is interesting science. A biodefense lab's interesting science being amplified by a CIA invested biosurveillance firm and a Gates funded journalism desk into a global transmission scare is not science communication. It is a biodefense capability marketing wearing public health clothing. The who and the loop that closes itself. Airfinity's specific recommendation in the Telegraph piece is that hantavirus survivors should be monitored analogous to the World Health Organization's WHO Ebola survivor seeming monitoring protocols. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is one of the WHO's largest donors. Don't forget that. Gates' contributions to the WHO have, in some recent years, exceeded those of most member states. So now follow the structure of the citation loop. The big circle rhymes with Turk. Spies Lab, Swiss Biodefense produces a one patient case report. Then Airfinity, CIA invested biosurveillance, amplifies it with policy recommendations. Then the Telegraph's Global Health Security Desk, also Gates funded, packages it for the masses. The recommendation protocols cite the WHO, Gates funded authority. And then 5, public pressure for those protocols expands biosurveillance budgets, which fund firms like Airfinity, which justifies further IQ2 investment, which generates more case reports, which feed more Telegraph stories. Each actor citing the next creates the appearance of independent expert confirmation. It is not independent. It is one funded ecosystem talking to itself with a single Swiss man's RNA fragments as the seed crystal. And each actor is simply doing the funded job that their institutional position rewards them for doing. And total annual hantavirus deaths globally are stated to be in the hundreds. Let's compare that to tobacco kills 8 million people every year. Air pollution, 7 million. Alcohol, 2.6 million. Road traffic, 1.2 million. Suicide, 700,000. We haven't even gotten into cancer and dementia and all that. And none of these CIA invested biosurveillance firm, a Gates funded journalism desk, and a Swiss biodefense lab amplifying preliminary findings into headline news. There's no Airfinity for ultra processed food. There's no QTEL backed startup tracking the public health impact of sedentary work, meaning just sitting around. The Hanta story is not just disproportionate, the disproportion, i.e., the hysteria, is the product. Public attention is a finite resource. Every column inch spent on whether a Swiss man 6-year-old viral RNA fragments might theoretically transmit sexually is an inch not spent on the killers without a funded apparatus behind them. This biosurveillance ecosystem doesn't just inflate certain risks, it crowds out attention to risks that do not fit its business model for money. And their journalism is functioning exactly as its funding incentivizes it to do. He says the honest headline would be Swiss researchers detect viral RNA fragments in one recovered Hanta patient semen years after recovery, could not isolate the virus. No sexual transmission of Hanta has ever been documented in any patient ever. Go follow SayerG's Substack or SayerG on Twitter. I'm Odessa Orlowitz. Consider subscribing so you can see my next story. I'll see you at the next one. Did you know if the banks do a bail-in, they can take the contents in your bank vault? But storing your gold and silver at home could be a huge security risk. Every day, our dollar is worth less and less. Inflation is stealing the only savings families have. Now more than ever, it's so important to hedge the savings you've worked so hard for. Banks have been failing all over the world, and social credit has all but arrived. But did you know you can do wholesale price vaulting and retail delivery from the most prestigious, reliable company in Canada? Did you also know if you decide to leave Canada, your gold and silver can be sent right to you after you arrive to your destination? The only company I personally use and trust are those awake guys at New World Precious Metals. Take control of your family's future. You can just click the link in my show description or type in the web address libertytalkcanada.ca/gold to get on their mailing list, attend their webinar, or book an appointment. Let them know Odessa sent you.